music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Blunt, Kelly, get caught in the lake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with the set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pun Show. And today, I always want to think of ponchos when I say pun show, but anyway. So today I want to talk about some things. And while I was organizing my show today in my head, there was another shooting, and they blamed the left because there was a bullet that had something about anti-ICE on it, even though only apparently immigrants were the only ones that got killed. And all I'm going to say about this is, one, we don't know anything yet, and it's irresponsible to be commenting on it until we know more on what the shooter's motives are. That aside, I see Fox News is not being responsible about it, and they're blaming it on Jimmy Kimmel. So, yeah. Fornicate off, Fox News. This is not the time for that. And I'll just say this much about the broader topic. They keep talking about how there's all this, anti, like all these attacks on ICE, assaults are up 1,000% on ICE, and that kind of crap. But all that's changed is there's two things that have changed. One is the activity ICE engages on, right? Like there is a lot more ICE going out and doing a lot more things. So statistically, the number of injuries are going to go up. It's not about, the violent left or the far left, or, like if you're calling Jimmy Kimmel the far left, then you really need to put both hands firmly on your butt cheeks and press as hard as you can until you hear a loud popping sound. And once that happens, maybe your brain can get a little oxygen and you can start to use it to think. Jimmy Kimmel is not far left. He's not some sort of, it's just they call everybody they disagree with far left. And I'm so tired of that crap. There's not some kind of massive, violence against the ICE or anything like that. You know how many ICE agents have actually been injured this year? Like physically injured? 5. They make it sound like there's and like, these are not even serious injuries for the most part. I think there's one guy that broke a leg, and that's the most serious injury. There's been 0 cases of ICE agents actually getting doxxed. Like there's been a lot of talk about ICE agents getting doxxed. But if you try to find an ICE agent that was doxxed, you can't find one. You know who's been doxxed? I was doxxed. And I even had my wife's cell phone number published on Twitter. So when you want to talk about doxing, it's the MAGAs that are doing it. They're doxing anybody that dares disagree with them or says something that gives them a feelings boo-boo. But in terms of this shooting and this shooter, I will refrain from commenting beyond that until there's actually information available. But I'm fairly certain that it didn't happen because of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue last night. I mean, Call me crazy. Call me a lefty loony. But I don't think it was because of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue last night. I didn't hear him say anything about, like you should go out there and shoot up ICE offices. All right. Now, let's move along. And we're done talking about that because that's all there is to say about it, and we don't know anything else. But I want to first talk about Jimmy Kimmel's monologue last night. And in 2 words, no notes. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. He was sincere. It was not what the MAGAs wanted, where he admitted to things that he never said, never meant to say, never meant to imply. But it was sincere in recalibrating what he actually said and defending the First Amendment. And, I do find it ironic that in the days following the Charlie Kirk assassination, MAGAs were very, very concerned that when he said things like Martin Luther King was a terrible person, or that, the Voting Rights Act was a mistake, or that, like gay people should be stoned. When he said all of those things, it was very, very important that we included the context of what he said, which doesn't actually change what he said. But when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel's quote, and he is talking about the MAGA reaction before we even knew who the shooter was, and how they were desperately trying to pin it on the left, the way they are doing with this shooter right now, by the way, they were like insistent that this guy was not one of their own before we knew who we were. At that point, it doesn't matter if it was actually one of their own or not, because that's the way they do every time there's a shooting. I have not looked on Twitter much about this, but I guarantee you there are people that are already talking about how the shooter was trans. That's like their go-to. They cannot wait to accuse every shooting of, and blaming it on trans people. There's been like over 2,000 mass shootings in the last 30 years, and 5 of them have been by transgender people. And they make it sound, the president of the United States literally said that there is an epidemic of transgender violence. And they want to make it sound like Jimmy Kimmel making an observation that the first thing MAGA does in every single mass shooting is try to blame it on the left. And it is actually what they were doing. And we still don't know he's not, by the way. Or, we still don't know that he is. There's, to me, if you go and you look at everything, there's a lot more evidence that he was motivated by Nick Fuentes than Bernie Sanders. Like, what are his ties to the left? The FBI looked and couldn't find any. So how do you know he was far left, or he was motivated by the far left? Where does that come from? All these far left, what far left leaders? Kamala Harris? Is she out there shooting people or telling people to shoot people? The ones using violent rhetoric are people like the president of the United States right now. But Jimmy Kimmel gave this really just perfect monologue last night. And everything Joanne thinks I'm right, so I like Joanne. So he gave it was a very funny, very heartfelt, very compelling, very sincere monologue. And I think one of my favorite lines was actually he when he said that Trump was saying that the show had terrible ratings, and so Kimmel quipped, "Not tonight." And I haven't seen the ratings yet, but I bet they were through the roof, at least if you don't live in a place where Sinclair is censoring free speech. Um, I and then so I was like thinking this is really good, and he even praised Erica, is it Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, and how her forgiving the shooter was actually following the teachings of Jesus, when she also followed. And I thought that was really something, like for him to do that. I just thought the whole thing was so sincere and so heartfelt and so kind. But Turning Point comes out today and says that it's not enough. He has to admit he said things that he didn't say. And he has to admit that he's sorry for meaning things he didn't mean. And I'm sorry. What happened to taking things in context again? It's like he is the one trying to extend an olive branch, and they're just pissing all over it. So yeah, fornicate off, Turning Point. You just proved Charlie Kirk is exactly who we thought he was. He would have been saying the same stupid, ugly rhetoric as you are. You haven't changed anything. You're carrying on his legacy perfectly. The other thing that Kimmel talked about was censorship and how important it is, and how important the actual fact that the people actually doing the censoring are the right. And they tried to censor him, and they tried to they're trying to change what happened. But as he pointed out, when the chairman of the FCC goes on a podcast and says that's exactly what happened, it's kind of hard to walk that back. So they go on there and they he was talking about that, and he brought up one of the things that I think is being overlooked a lot, and that's that only approved reporting can come out of the Pentagon now. Otherwise, you lose your press access. And this is the kind of thing, let's be honest. Say Biden did that. And then, well, how would Fox News react to that? Would they react exactly the same? Call me crazy, but I don't think so. I never heard Fox News calling for only what if after the Afghanistan pullout and there was the criticism? What if Biden said only approved reporting on Afghanistan? The Pentagon has to approve all your reporting on Afghanistan. How would the right react to that? I mean, honestly, if you don't agree with anything I ever say, please just take a minute and just think if that had happened. And some, and I know some MAGAs, they don't understand what whataboutism is. This is not whataboutism. Whataboutism is when you say, what about when this person did that? This is a hypothetical situation where you're just reversing the roles to expose, hey, maybe I'm not being logically consistent here. I'm not whatabouting with Joe Biden because Joe Biden never did it. No other president has ever done this. This is unique in the history of the country. No one has ever done this. So when you say things like that, it just makes you sound stupid. It is not a what, a both sides type thing. And so today, I wake up, I turn on the TV just to see what's going on, and there's Joe Scarborough, Donald Trump's favorite dinner guest, carrying on about how there's censorship on the left on college campuses and both sides need to take. Dude, don't both sides this. Don't. There's not censorship on the college campuses. There just isn't. What there is there's teaching of facts on college campuses. And if you feel like your side is getting censored by college campuses are not obligated to teach what the Republican Party says. Hey, Joe. Welcome. College campuses are not obligated to teach everything the Republican Party says or everything the Democratic Party says. What college campuses are required to do, or what should be doing, what their role is to teach you facts and teach you how to think. And if in the process of learning facts and how to think, you start going, gee, maybe a lot of this MAGA stuff is wrong, that just means that's what reality is. It is not my fault or the university's fault or anyone else's fault that reality has a so-called liberal bias. And it's weird. It's weird how they react. Like, I'll say white supremacy is wrong, and they'll be like, oh, that's just what they taught you at the liberal universities. And why are you attacking conservatives? And they get all upset that I equate being a conservative with being a white supremacist, or being a MAGA with a white supremacist. But if I criticize white supremacy, or if I criticize racism, or if I criticize misogyny, they're like, why are you blaming conservatives for that? And I'm not blaming conservatives for that. But you, being a conservative, hearing that it's wrong, got all defensive. So you're just telling on yourself when you do that. So then the turning point is all like, this is exactly what Jimmy Kimmel has to say. And this is something else I want to talk about that's related to this whole Jimmy Kimmel / free speech topic, is that there's something else called compelled speech. And compelled speech means you can't force somebody to say something they don't agree with. And ironically, the foundational case for this was some Mormons didn't want to be forced to pledge of allegiance to the flag. And the reason for that is that they said that the flag is an idol and that they should not, like being forced to pledge allegiance to this idol was a violation of their freedom of religion. Hang on a second. Joe says, colleges teach critical thinking. Since Republicans can't win debates, they want to legislate their views onto the campuses. And that's exactly what it is. And I might go on a big long rant on this whole college campus thing someday, because it's also stupid. I spent, about 15 years as a minister for college students and went to college campuses on a daily basis for 15 years of my life. All right. I spent a lot of times with a lot of conservative college students. I was the liberal branch. Like, I alone was the liberal. No, there were actually about, 10% of us were maybe liberals. But we weren't a political group. We were a Christian group. And that's how, and we stayed out of politics. But I know what it takes to, I know the there are certain uh what is the word, like procedures on every campus, like to become a campus group, to get a campus, like to get a building, all of that kind of things. And you, for instance, I think most campuses, you have to put in some kind of constitution. They'll give you, you go into the student organization office, they'll give you a like a template, and then you just fill in the blanks. You have to get a teacher to sponsor you. We never had any trouble getting a teacher to sponsor us. But you needed a sponsor, and you needed at least 3 students, and you needed the Constitution. And then you can do things like actually, call yourselves a campus group, and you can set up tables. They'll have days where all the different campus groups from, the Turning Point USA is one of them, by the way. Wasn't when I was doing it, but now they are. But there would be like Republican Christians and stuff like that, or Republican campus groups and different kinds of conservative groups. It was never a one-sided, lopsided thing. It's like, as long as you met the criteria, you got a group. And then sometimes, like you'd be hosting an event and you'd have to be able to establish that you had so many people coming to the event in order to get the venue, because you're not the only campus group there. And a lot of times these, like Republican groups will act like, if you don't get the biggest, bestest venue for every organization, then somehow you're being discriminated against. But that's not what happens. And I'm sorry if you've been taught otherwise, but I have personally been there. I have personally filled out paperwork and done this like hundreds of times. Like, I am far more experienced on this than the average person, because I did it for 15 years and I know what I'm talking about. And there is no bias against Christian groups. There's no bias against conservative groups. That's completely made up. That the self-victimization of the right wing is just comedy. It's high comedy. The idea that white men, Christian men, are somehow the most ostracized, people in this country as a white Christian male. Let me tell you, I have never experienced bigotry firsthand. I have never been the victim of it. I have never been the victim of racism. I have never been the victim of having my, like being, ostracized because of my religion. I'm not a martyr. Neither was Charlie Kirk. Like, let's just stop with all that. And Turning Point needs to be pointed in a different direction and make a turn, because what they said was just wrong, and it wasn't Christian. And forcing somebody to say things they don't agree with. Sorry, I got on a tangent. Forcing somebody to say things they don't agree with, that's called compelled speech. And so compelled speech is more protected than free speech. It's like the most protected form of speech, especially when it comes to political speech. And the difference is between me saying, like, you can't say this, or I'll be, or you'll be censored if you do say this, and me saying you have to say this. Like, I think there was a case where there was like a couple of cases. There was a case where somebody was fired because they had a bumper sticker on their a political bumper sticker that the boss didn't agree with. And he felt like that bumper sticker being on the car when this, and the guy used his car for business, and apparently, like, in this business or whatever, it was like, almost, I don't know which party it was, like, but just let's say it was a conservative boss, and most of the people he worked with were bosses, um, were conservatives, and the bumper sticker was a liberal bumper sticker, and the guy said, you can't have that bumper sticker, it's bad for my business. And the guy refused to remove the bumper sticker, saying it was a free speech issue. And then eventually it was decided, if you're on the clock and your free speech is representing more than just you, then your boss can fire you if your boss feels like it's, also representing him. And that seems pretty, like, pretty reasonable to me. I can understand that. But then there was another case where it was somebody said you have to have bumper stickers. You have to have this bumper sticker on your personal car or else you get fired. And then that case got dismissed because, or, like, that was considered unconstitutional because that's compelled speech. You can't make somebody say something they don't agree with. All right. Now what's happening is they are trying to compel Jimmy Kimmel to say something that he does not mean, to apologize for something he did not do. They want to force him to lie to fulfill their narrative. And they're threatening hundreds of jobs and an entire network if he doesn't do it. And they're using the leverage of the United States government to do that. That is not just compelled speech, that is egregiously compelled speech. Honestly, the FCC needs to, like, not be involved in this the same way it has never been involved in things like that. Um so yeah, fornicate you, turning point. I hope fornicate you doesn't count as swearing. It is not technically a swear word, but you know what I mean. Okay. So, anyway, I really, really appreciate what Jimmy Kimmel said last night. And I'm sure that it's on YouTube or something. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and take a look. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is autism. And as I was saying yesterday, there's a friend I've made. His name is Ben. He's from Scotland, and he's a big fan of American politics for some reason, and seems like a really nice guy. Um, and he was posting yesterday, like, I'm not autistic because my mom took Tylenol, and I'm not autistic because my mom got me vaccinated. I'm autistic because that's the way my brain works. And I think that's really good, because, I think that we have consistently, just like with RFK Jr., they're making it sound like there's something wrong with people that have autism. Like they make people autism. They make people with autism the autism and not people. And that's something that needs to stop. I think that there is a huge spectrum of people that have autism, and some are very high functioning. And I've met people I've even surprised they're on the spectrum. Um, and there are probably many people on the spectrum that don't know it. And there are probably some famous people on the spectrum that you don't know it. But that's all speculation. Um, but this is all kind of in this drive to find the cause of autism, which I think is good. Like, I think we should figure out what happens, why does it happen? But I think that needs to be done honestly, with honest research by honest scientists that are honestly trained, and not this stuff that is manufactured by RFK Jr. or recycled by RFK Jr. And so there's two things that, like they've talked about with the autism thing. And those are, like the uh, vaccines and Tylenol or acetaminophen, which is like, don't ask Donald Trump to pronounce that word 5 times fast. Okay. So I just want to go back. And first, let's talk about, I'm going to pop this up here. I just had some crib notes that are with the help of my good buddy Grok. And I've, like double checked all this to make sure that it's accurate. Okay. Oh, whoops. I got the wrong one up there, did I? Okay, hang on. Okay, yeah, that's the wrong one. Okay. Okay. Oh, hey, that's what I ought to do. Okay, stop screen. Sorry about this. All right. I need to get there we go. All right. So first, I wanted to, get into this. Where did the whole vaccine thing come from? Where did this link between vaccines and autism come from? And I'm going to do a whiteboard video on this one later today. All right. So the 1998 study published in the Lancet by Andrew Wakefield, who is anyway, you'll get into it. Not the most credible of sources, we'll say, and colleagues, was a small case series of 12 children. All right. So all of this comes from a case study of 12 children. 12. A dozen. Not even a baker's dozen. A dozen children. Suggesting a link between MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella. That's the one that they're always talking about. And that's the one that Donald Trump lied and said is like really huge. And it's 1/10 of a teaspoon. It claimed that the children developed autism and gastrointestinal issues soon after vaccination, proposing a causal connection via supposed mechanism involving vaccine-induced gut inflammation. All right. So 12 people got the shots, and then right away they had these reactions, and then they developed autism. Like, if that's actually what happened, then it's like worth looking into, right? It's at least worth considering. It's maybe not proof, but it's it's a big step towards looking into it. Only thing is, it turns out that's not exactly what happened. All right. So we're actually going to go to number 2 first, because this is really, to me, significant. Investigations, notably by journalist Brian Deere, revealed Wakefield manipulated the data. Patient records showed discrepancies, like autism symptoms predating vaccination in some cases, contradicting the study's timeline. So, if it's somebody that already has autism that then gets vaccinated, by the nature of the laws of the space-time continuum, we can determine that the autism was not caused by the shot, which came subsequent to the development of autism symptoms. So you would think that right there, just the fact that the study was, that deliberately skewed, that it misrepresented what actually happened and the order things happened in, you would think, gee, maybe this study is not worth paying attention to. And I want to emphasize, this study is still what the anti-vaxxers use to prove vaccines cause autism. So, okay, methodological flaws. The study was, it's harder to say than acetaminophen. Methodological flaws. The study was small, lacked a control group, and relied on parental recall, which is prone to bias. So it wasn't even just like an ongoing study where they, okay, let's give them the vaccine and then we'll see if these traits develop or not. We're going to have a control group where we use, like different, like where we use a placebo vaccine and see if there's any difference there. None of that. It was just parents saying, yeah, well, from what I recall. So that's why you don't just go off of memory. And, like memory is highly overrated, by the way. Because people remember things differently. If you've ever had an argument with your spouse, then you absolutely know how people can remember different things. You said this. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Like, if that sounds familiar to you, then you know that, and then it's like both parties can like honestly remember things differently, but our perception and the way that we the details we remember can vary from one person to the next. There's also always the memory is subject to manipulation, where they've done this with eyewitness accounts where people will remember things that didn't happen once it's suggested to them. So just memory is not this thing that people think it is. Memory is actually not a good tool for evaluating scientific outcomes. Like, no. So, okay, first of all, they lied about the results. The study itself was horribly done and unscientific. Then we're going to save this number 3 for last. Lack of replication, numerous. So, like, if it were just completely dismissed out of hand and nobody had thought about it or looked at it and ever tried to do anything. So remember, this had 12 people. This study had 12 people, right? So somebody's like, okay, why don't we go and study this and see if it's true? So they did many times. Numerous large-scale studies, including a 2002 Danish study of over 500,000 children and a 2019 study of 650,000 children, found no link between MMR and autism. The original findings couldn't be reproduced. Okay, so one study had 12 people. The other 2 studies, which met scientific standards, had what? 1,150,000 children. So which one do you think is more credible? And they're just going to say, hey, well, that's what Big Pharma wants you to say. Well, no. Because then you're sitting there and you're talking about, oh, well, Big Pharma just wants to make money on this. So now we'll go back up to this conflict of interest. Wakefield was funded by lawyers pursuing lawsuits against manufacturers, undisclosed at the time, raising ethical questions about bias. Yeah, I would think so. So he fabricated a terrible study where he changed the data and got paid £55,000 in 1999 by lawyers that were suing the pharmaceutical industry over these vaccines. And they needed some kind of proof. And so they paid him to fabricate data, and that's what he did. That's the whole story right there. And when they've tried to reproduce that, it has consistently And study after study failed to raise any kind of connection. All right. This is a real issue we have with the starver of brainworms running the Department of Health and Human Services. He's an idiot. He is truly an idiot. Well, I don't know. Maybe he's used to be smart at some point in time. I guess he got his law degree or something. But this is idiotic, whether he's an idiot or not. Giving this study any credence at all is idiotic and has no place in healthcare. And it's not inconsequential. We've got the highest outbreaks in years in measles and mumps and rubella. And guess what those things have in common? If you said the MMR agent vaccine takes care of them, then you're right. Excuse me while I sneeze. Sorry. This is what happens when you go live. Sometimes you just gotta sneeze. But you ever had the I thought I was gonna be in one of those stuck in one of those places where you get the without the chew, and I hate that. It's like you're just sitting there waiting for the sneeze to complete, and it never finishes. It's terrible. Okay, so back to the autism links. Okay, the next thing is this whole thing about Tylenol causing autism. All right, now let's talk about this for a second, because this one there is at least, like a little more correlation, but correlation and causation are not the same thing. And very often correlation, like when people talk about correlation and causation, they're just like, are these two random things that go together, or are these two things that the causation is actually reversed? And so I think that's what's happening with the Tylenol thing is they're saying that women that take Tylenol have a higher instance of autism, or their babies have a higher instance of autism. And the problem with that is that there are numerous things for which you would be taking Tylenol, which may be the thing that actually causes autism. We still don't know what causes autism. But, there are things like high fevers that are also correlated with autism. And so if you're taking Tylenol to reduce your fever, then the fever is causing you taking the Tylenol. And so the fever is actually causing both you to take Tylenol and a higher instance of autism. This is like blaming chemotherapy for causing cancer. Like, the treatment is not the disease. And in essence, that's what is happening with all this Tylenol stuff. And so how do I know that? Well, because you do studies. And a large 2024 Swedish sibling control study with 2.5 million children initially showed an association between Tylenol and autism, but found it disappeared when comparing siblings sharing genetics and environment, attributing the link to confounding factors like maternal health, not the drug itself. This design is considered gold standard for ruling out familial bias. A 2024 JAMA pediatric study similarly found no increased risk for autism. So I'm sorry, let me go back to this. So what they did is they looked at, okay, if this caused autism, when the same mom got pregnant with a different child, and all the other and all the other factors were the same, Tylenol did not cause autism here, but it did cause autism here. And you can say, well, that's not. And what happened when you look at this, the siblings had 0% correlation. So this indicates that this is not a cause effect type thing. There is zero correlation, or there's no reason to suspect that Tylenol causes autism other than the correlation, and the correlation doesn't uphold to higher scrutiny. And you have experts from organizations like the CDC, which I don't know if Brock's caught up on this, ACOG, and Autism Speaks stress no proven causal mechanism exists. And autism's rise is better explained by improved diagnostics and genetics, and not acetaminophen. Untreated fevers during pregnancy pose known fetal risks. And this is the other part, is it's like there are all kinds of conditions that when a mother is running a high fever, it actually is a real danger to the fetus. And it raises chances of miscarriage like 2.5 to 3 times, especially if the fever's in the first trimester. Like statistically, it is far more harmful to tell pregnant women, and it's far more dangerous to tell pregnant women to not take Tylenol than to tell them to take it. If you have a fever, I don't care what Donald Trump says. I do not care what Donald Trump says. I do not care what RFK Jr. says. And I don't care what anybody without credentials has to say, and you shouldn't care about what I have to say, because I'm not a doctor either. But I will say this: if your doctor tells you you should take Tylenol as a pregnant woman, listen to your doctor, not the Great Pumpkin, and not Screechy Gurgle Throat or whatever his name is. I get so tired of having just to this is not some troll on the internet, not just some ignorant doofus, that has a patriot flag, or like MAGA dad, 2 children. Oh, look, I procreated. Oh, come on, dude. It's like most of the people on Earth are here because somebody procreated. You're not special just because you have 2 kids. And I just hope that whoever the mother is consented. This is not just some dude on Twitter. This is the chair of the Department of Health and Human Services, or the, Secretary of Department of Health and Human Services, just going on with utterly debunked nonsense. All right. So let me be clear. Vaccines don't cause autism, and neither does Tylenol or acetaminophen. And if you believe that, I encourage you to actually think and learn and actually consider the facts and the logic. Because this is just debunked nonsense. And you could literally kill your child. There are, I think, a couple infants died of measles so far this year. RFK Jr. is out there murdering infants with his rhetoric. But sure, let's just blame everything on the left. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe, you've been talking. I go back and forth a lot on AI. I understand the criticisms of it. I think it's like one of those things. It's a tool. It's like fire. It's just you just need to use it responsibly. And on the climate change thing, I'm gonna have to just do something else on that. I think that there is a credible argument that using AI can actually, while it uses more electricity, and especially I think if the electricity it's using is renewable energy, but it's not just that; it's that AI can help us advance quicker in developing renewable energy, and so that the energy it uses could end up being compensated by the energy it saves. I think right now about it's not a significant amount of energy as a percentage of our total energy that we're using, and a lot of it is running off of renewable energy farms. So I'm not as anti AI as some people are, but I think that it also can be used irresponsibly, and like a lot of these like deep fake stuff and whatnot that comes with AIs, that I have an issue with. And I think it's not just people that are using deep fakes, but the rise of use in deep fakes is allowing people to dismiss anything that they don't like as a deep fake, and I think that is also problematic. So I think it's a new area. I think we need to have some oversight of it, and I think we need to understand what we're doing with it. I don't believe, that it's going to end up with Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back to kill some kid, or a pregnant mom or something. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that it is a danger to democracy if it is unchecked. And I think that the deep fake things are an issue. So I've got a lot of mixed feelings on AI. I think it's got some benefits and I think it's got some drawbacks. All right. That was a total tangent I hadn't meant to go on. But hey, it's not like I'm talking over anybody. So, all right, let's go on to the next topic. Oh yeah, good old Tom Homan. And I cannot think of his name without feeling like Homan should be some kind of word for a human ham. Because the man looks like a boiled ham. And he's almost as smart. So anyway, allegedly, like only according to everyone and not denied by anyone, including Tom Homan, he received $50,000 in exchange for getting contracts or for handing out contracts once he was appointed, if he won, like if Trump won. So there was already obviously some consideration that Trump was going to win, and and allegedly he is on camera taking $50,000 in a brown paper bag or whatever it was. Like I can't remember the name of there was like a takeout bag or something, and he had it. He took $50,000, and the FBI has this, and decided that they would wait and see if he followed through on his bribery promise before prosecuting it. And then Trump's FBI, being Trump's FBI, said, no, I'm sorry. We only prosecute liberals here, whether they committed a crime or not. And so they're burying this. And they're saying, oh, this was all some sort of, scheme by the left. Or all right, so let me put this way. All right, if somebody is framing, if he's on film taking $50,000, where did this film come from? Is it one of those AI deepfakes? Like, if it didn't happen, it would have to be faked by somebody, right? If it did happen, then that's one thing, right? Like, and he should be investigated. But if it didn't happen, then the frame should be being investigated. Like, who made this deepfake? Isn't that something worth knowing? Like, if you have somebody sitting there trying to frame some of the highest level security people in the country responsible for our security, and they're trying to frame somebody with these deepfake videos, wouldn't that be something worth investigating? Why is the Trump administration not investigating whoever tried to frame Tom Homan, unless no one is trying to frame Tom Homan and it really happened? Right? Either it really happened or it didn't. But whether it happened or not, there should be an investigation. And the fact that there is not an investigation suggests to me one thing: that it did happen, and they want to bury it. Right? That's the only logical explanation here. If it did happen and they wanted to get to the bottom of it, they would be investigating. If it didn't happen and they didn't want to get to the bottom of it, then they would be investigating. If it didn't happen and they didn't want anybody to know about it, then why wouldn't they want anybody to know about it? But if it did happen and they're not investigating it, then that only shows you they don't want anybody to know what actually happened. They won't investigate their own. With new MAGA politics, it's only about law and order if you're an opponent. The law does not apply to MAGAs. And apparently it doesn't apply to Democrats either. But not in the way you think I'm saying. You don't have to break the law to be accused of breaking the law now, or to be investigated. And even after Letitia James, they investigated her trying to find a crime, and when they couldn't find one, they fired the guy for not finding one. You've got cases being thrown out by grand juries. And they always say, oh, you can investigate it, or you can indict a ham sandwich. That's what we heard over and over again about why, the indictment of the Donald Trump indictments didn't matter, because you can indict a ham sandwich. But you've got indictments being thrown out by grand juries at record pace. DOJ does not typically lose. I mean, because they are good at what they do up until the clown show took over. It was like, I think like 98 or 99% or something like that of indictments got or of cases brought before the grand jury are or end up indictments. So now you've got like just they tried, and this is one of my favorites is like they're trying to indict the guy that threw the sandwich at the ice guy or whatever it was, and the grand jury's like, no, sorry, we just don't see this as being what you say it is. And they tried it like 2 or 3 different times. They tried to indict this guy. So I have 2 questions. One, have they tried indicting the sandwich? And 2, was it a ham sandwich? Because this is your actual chance to indict a ham sandwich. But anyway, I think that is all I have for today. And I thank y'all for joining me. I appreciate your support, and I hope you have a great day. Just try to avoid Fox News if you want to stay sane.